Fleet Commander Zixna stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, her crystalline, armor-refracting starlight as she watched the primitive human satellites drift by. Their crude construction and basic propulsion systems almost seemed like an insult to space travel itself. Her mandibles clicked in quiet amusement as another communications satellite passed beneath them, broadcasting its simple radio waves into the void. Tactical analysis complete, Commander. First Officer Curl reported, his neural interface streaming data across the ship's organic displays. Their military capabilities are precisely as our long-range scans indicated. Nuclear weapons, chemical propulsion, and early-stage fusion experiments. Their most advanced weapons couldn't even breach our tertiary shields. Zixna's inner eyes blinked in sequence, processing the information. The Zixrathi Confederacy had conquered 17 species in the past century alone, but none had been quite this primitive while simultaneously showing signs of potential. Usually, species either had it or they didn't. Humans were an anomaly, brilliant in some areas, hopelessly backward in others. "Show me their population centers," she commanded. The holographic display shifted, Earth's surface illuminating with clusters of light representing human civilization. Fascinating. They spread everywhere, even into barely habitable regions. Adaptable, at least. The bridge crew worked in efficient silence, their crystalline exoskeletons humming faintly as they interfaced with their stations. The Eternal Dawn drifted past Jupiter's orbit, its cloaking systems making it invisible to Earth's primitive detection methods. "Commander," Science Officer Vaxtol interrupted, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones of concern. "We're detecting an unusual energy signature from Europa." Zixna turned her attention to the display. "Define unusual." "It's nothing, Commander. A brief quantum fluctuation. Probably natural phenomena from the moon's ice sheets." Vaxtol adjusted her sensors. "Though I should note it contained patterns that almost appeared." "We don't have time for almost, Science Officer," Zixna interrupted. "The Council expects our initial assessment within the planetary cycle. Focus on the primary target." The massive warship continued its approach, followed by its fleet of support vessels. None of them noticed the small changes in Europa's ice patterns, nor the subtle shifts in the quantum field around them. Their sensors, advanced as they were, hadn't been calibrated to detect technology that operated on principles they'd never encountered. Deep beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, in a chamber that had remained sealed for 10 millennia, a series of lights activated in sequence. Ancient machines, their surfaces untouched by time, began cycling up. A consciousness that had waited patiently through the ages stirred. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Zixna reviewed the final invasion assessments. 7 billion humans, divided into nation-states, still fighting over resources and ideology. Their most advanced computers used simple binary systems. Their space presence consisted of a handful of orbital stations and some primitive satellites. They would make excellent labor once properly subjugated. "Prepare the standard first contact package," she ordered. "Let's see how quickly they surrender when they realize what they're facing." She had overseen enough conquests to know the pattern. The first display of technological superiority usually broke their will quickly. Krill complied, but then paused. "Commander, I'm detecting some anomalies in the planetary scan. More than usual readings." Zixna's tone carried a warning. "No, Commander. Just inconsistencies in their development timeline. Their technological progression doesn't follow any pattern we've encountered before. It's almost as if." A sudden alarm cut through the bridge. Multiple systems reported simultaneous failures, then just as quickly returned to normal. For a fraction of a second, every screen displayed the same symbol, a shattered world wrapped in chains. Signal interference. Kirill announced quickly. Origin unknown. Systems have recovered. Zixna's outer eyes narrowed. Log it for analysis later. Begin the approach sequence. Let's introduce ourselves to our new subjects. The Eternal Dawn moved into position, its fleet spreading out in perfect formation. Above Earth, satellites continued their quiet orbits, broadcasting their simple signals. And deep below, ancient systems continued their activation sequences, preparing to wake a sleeping giant. The Zixrathi were about to learn why some species aren't primitive by accident, but by choice. Senior archaeologist Venra wiped the fine Saharan sand from her sensory appendages, her crystalline form struggling to maintain optimal temperature in the brutal desert heat. The dig site sprawled before her, a perfect hexagon cut into the ancient earth, its walls impossibly smooth despite their apparent age. Impossible, she muttered, running her scanning probe across the surface again. These readings can't be correct. Her assistant, Miktal, hurried over, his exoskeleton coated in a layer of dust. The dating analysis is complete, Senior. The chamber. It's over 10,000 years old. That's not the impossible part. Venra touched the surface, feeling the subtle vibration beneath her contact sensors. This material shouldn't exist. It's a metamaterial with a negative refractive index, but it's also organic. It's alive, Miktal. After 10,000 years, it's still alive. Around them, the dig team worked with increasing urgency, their standard archaeological protocols forgotten in the face of discovery after discovery. Each layer they removed revealed new impossibilities. Technology that defied their understanding. Materials that shouldn't exist. And everywhere, that same symbol, the shattered world in chains. Senior, a junior archaeologist, called from the chamber entrance they'd uncovered. We've breached the inner seal. You need to see this. Venra descended into the chamber, her biolights illuminating the space. The room was perfectly spherical, its walls covered in flowing scripts that seemed to shift and change as she watched. But it was the centerpiece that drew her attention, a cubic structure, roughly 2 meters on each side, suspended in midair without any visible support. It's a quantum computer, Miktal whispered, his scanners working overtime. But the computational density, it's orders of magnitude beyond anything we've ever developed. The energy readings suggest it's still operational. Venra approached the floating cube carefully. Have we informed Fleet Command? That's the other thing, Senior. Miktal's voice carried an undertone of worry. We're not the only ones who found something. Reports are coming in from dig sites all over the planet. The Himalayan team found a fusion reactor complex. The Pacific Deep Sea Expedition discovered some kind of consciousness transfer facility. And the Antarctic. What about the Antarctic? They're not responding anymore. Last transmission mentioned something about a zero-point array activating on its own. Then silence. Venra's inner eyes widened as the floating cube suddenly hummed to life, its surface rippling like liquid metal. Symbols began appearing in the air around it, but not in any language she recognized. Yet somehow she understood their meaning. Warning, she translated aloud. Access sequence initiated. Consensus oversight protocol engaging. The children must be ready. Children? Miktal asked. What children? Before Venra could respond, her communication device chimed. A priority message from Fleet Command. All archaeological teams were to cease operations immediately and withdraw to their ships. No explanations given. "Pack it up," she ordered, but her voice faltered as she noticed something strange. The human labourers they'd hired for the heavy lifting were gone. Not just gone, there was no trace they'd ever been there. No footprints in the sand, no discarded tools, nothing. "Senior," Mictol's voice shook slightly. "The quantum computer. It's changing." The cube had begun to unfold, its surfaces flowing like water, revealing layer upon layer of technology that made their most advanced systems look like children's toys. And as it transformed, the air around them seemed to thicken with possibility. "Evacuate," Venra ordered, backing away. "Everyone out now." But as they rushed to the surface, she couldn't shake the feeling that they'd set something in motion, something that had been waiting for millennia. The humans hadn't just buried their advanced technology, they'd hidden it in plain sight, scattered across their entire planet, waiting for the right moment. Or perhaps, she thought as she watched the quantum computer's light reach toward the sky, waiting for the wrong people to find it. In orbit, aboard the Eternal Dawn, Commander Zixina received the first of what would become many desperate transmissions from her archaeological teams. The conquest of Earth, she was beginning to realize, might be considerably more complicated than anticipated. Security Chief Kexity reviewed the footage for the 12th time, his crystalline form rigid with frustration. The human worker had simply walked through a solid wall, vanishing as if they'd never existed. Not just one, 17 disappearances in the past solar rotation, all following the same impossible pattern. "Play it again," he commanded, adjusting his sensory inputs. The holographic display flickered, showing a human maintenance worker approaching a seemingly normal section of rock face at the Gobi Desert dig site. The worker paused, turned slightly as if listening to something, then stepped forward. The rock rippled like water, and they were gone. His communication crystal pulsed with an incoming message. "Chief," one of his officers reported, "we've lost another 3 at the Amazon facility. And sir, the local human authorities aren't responding to our inquiries anymore." Kexity's outer eyes narrowed. The human governments had been surprisingly cooperative during the initial occupation phases, almost suspiciously so. Now they seemed to be operating from a script, their responses becoming increasingly automated and hollow. "Forward me their last communication," he ordered, already dreading what he'd find. The message appeared before him. "Situation normal. Continue operations as planned. No cause for concern." The exact same response they'd received from 6 different governments, word for word. A soft chime indicated another presence in his office. Science Officer Vaxtel entered, her usually pristine crystalline form showing signs of stress fractures. "The quantum anomalies are increasing," she reported without preamble. "Every site where we've lost humans shows the same pattern. Localized disruptions in spacetime, like something's pulling apart the fabric of reality itself." Kexity gestured to his display. "Could these explain the disappearances?" "Chief, I don't think they're disappearing." Vaxtel's voice carried harmonics of fear. "I think they're remembering. Look at this." She interfaced with his system, bringing up new data. Energy readings from the human population were changing. Subtle bioelectrical patterns that their sensors had initially dismissed as background noise were showing coordination, purpose. "They're connecting to something," she explained. "The quantum computer we found. It's not just a computer, it's a key. And there are millions of locks scattered throughout their population, hidden in their very DNA." A priority alert flashed across their displays. In orbit, 3 Zixrathi survey ships had gone dark, their systems failing simultaneously. The last transmission from each contained the same image, a human crew member smiling directly at the camera, their eyes reflecting light that shouldn't exist. "Chief," his officer's voice crackled through the crystal again. "The humans at the Pacific facility, they're changing." The security feed showed a group of human scientists gathered around an ancient console. Their forms seemed to blur, shifting between states of matter, as if reality itself couldn't decide what they were supposed to be. One turned to face the camera, their body transparent one moment, solid the next, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Shut down all sites," Kexity ordered, his voice sharp with urgency. "Full containment protocols. Nothing gets in or out." "Sir," Vaxtel interrupted, her sensors pulsing rapidly. "The quantum computer, it's receiving a signal." "From where?" "Everywhere. Every human on the planet is broadcasting on quantum frequencies we didn't even know existed. They're not primitive at all. They're encrypted. Their entire species is encrypted, and someone just entered the password." The lights flickered, and for a moment, every screen in the facility displayed that haunting symbol, the shattered world in chains. But this time, the chains were breaking. Kexity reached for his emergency beacon, but paused as he noticed something impossible. His own shadow was moving independently, stretching toward a corner of the room that seemed darker than it should be. And from that darkness, he heard something that made his crystalline form resonate with primordial fear, human laughter, but not from any human throat he'd ever heard. The Watchers were no longer content to merely watch. Humanity was waking up, not from sleep, but from a self-imposed quarantine that had lasted millennia. And the Zixrathi were about to discover why some species choose to hide their true nature, not out of weakness, but out of mercy for everyone else. Commander Zixna stood frozen before the holographic display, watching as the perfect hemisphere of empty space marked where the Gobi Desert facility had been. No explosion, no warning, no debris. Just a perfect void carved from the planet's surface, taking with it 3,000 of her best troops and researchers. "Impossible," she whispered, her crystalline form vibrating with suppressed emotion. "Show me the sensor readings again." First Officer Kuril interfaced with the ship's systems, but the results remained the same. "Nothing, Commander. No energy signature, no radiation, no temporal distortion. It's as if that section of space simply chose not to exist anymore." The Eternal Dawn's bridge hummed with tense activity as reports flooded in from across the planet. Their most advanced sensors, capable of detecting the movement of subatomic particles, were revealing a truth too terrifying to comprehend. "The planet," Science Officer Vaxtel announced, her voice trembling. "It's not real, at least not entirely. The crust, the mantle, they're a shell, Commander. A construct wrapped around something far older, far more vast." Zixna's outer eyes contracted. "Explain." Vaxtel projected a new image, showing Earth's internal structure. Instead of the expected geological layers, they saw patterns, deliberate, engineered patterns that spoke of intelligence and purpose. "The entire planet is a machine, Commander, or rather a cocoon, and it's waking up." As if in response to her words, alerts blazed across every console. Across Earth's surface, mountains began to shift. Not with the slow grind of tectonic movement, but with the precise motion of machinery that had waited eons to fulfill its purpose. "New contact," Kuril shouted. "Something's launching from the Antarctic site." The object that rose from the ice defied description. It twisted through dimensions their sensors couldn't properly process, its surface simultaneously solid and fluid, ancient and new. As it ascended toward their fleet, Zixna realized with horror that it wasn't a weapon or a ship. It was a hand, impossibly vast, reaching for them with casual deliberation. Evasive action. She ordered, but the Eternal Dawn's controls have frozen. On every screen, that familiar symbol of the shattered world appeared, but now the chains were gone, replaced by wings of light. Through their ship's sensors, they watched as humans across the planet began to change. Their forms shifted, physical bodies becoming mere suggestions rather than limitations. Some simply winked out of existence, while others transformed into beings of pure energy, their consciousness expanding to fill spaces between spaces. "Commander," Kirill's voice was barely a whisper. "We're receiving a transmission from inside our ship's quantum core." The message that played wasn't in any language, yet every Zixrathi present understood it perfectly. "The deep sleep ends. The children remember. Thank you for the wake-up call." Vaxtol's sensors suddenly screamed with activity. "Commander, the planet's shell, it's not just machinery, it's a library, a record of everything humanity abandoned when they chose to start over, and now they're accessing it all at once." The giant hand reached their fleet, but instead of attacking, it simply held position. Around them, space itself seemed to hold its breath. In that moment of terrible clarity, Zixna understood. They hadn't discovered a primitive species ripe for conquest. They'd discovered the nursery of gods, protected by powers they couldn't comprehend. "All ships," she ordered, her voice steady despite her fear, "hold position. No aggressive actions. That's an order." Through the viewport, Earth continued its transformation. The surface rippled like water, revealing glimpses of the true structure beneath, a masterwork of engineering that made their most advanced technology look like a child's toys. And among the changes, humans continued their own metamorphosis, reclaiming the legacy they had willingly sealed away eons ago. The hand hovering before their fleet finally moved, not to destroy but to gesture. Reality shifted, and the Eternal Dawn's bridge was suddenly elsewhere, ready to witness what happened when humanity finally decided to wake up and remember what they truly were. For the Zixrathi Confederacy, this was not the end. It was simply their first lesson in true humility. Dr. Sarah Chen had always known she was different, though she could never explain why. Standing in her small oceanographic research lab in Guam, she watched her hands shimmer with newfound awareness. The knowledge flooding her consciousness felt both foreign and familiar, like remembering a language she'd never learned but had always known. Sarah. Dr. Marcus Webb, her research partner, stood in the doorway. His form was already shifting, reality bending around him like heat waves off hot asphalt. "You feel it too, don't you?" She nodded, understanding flowing through her mind like a tidal wave. "The Deep Pacific facility. We need to go there. Now." They didn't take a boat. They didn't need to anymore. Sarah simply thought about the coordinates buried in her awakening memories. 11 dig 20 tone 142 dig 35, Challenger deep, and space folded around them. They emerged in a vast chamber that had waited patiently beneath 11 kilometers of ocean for this exact moment. "Home," Marcus whispered, though he'd never been here before. The facility hummed to life around them, responding to their presence. Ancient displays flickered with information in languages that should have been incomprehensible but made perfect sense. Sarah approached the central console, her fingers dancing across surfaces that rippled like liquid metal. "We're not the only ones," she said, watching as thousands of similar activations lit up the global network. All around the world, people are remembering. The chamber's walls shifted, becoming transparent, revealing the true scope of the facility. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, a city-sized complex of impossible technology and stored knowledge, and it was just one of many. "The Zixrathi," Marcus said, accessing the defense networks with instincts he didn't know he had. They're about to learn why we chose to forget. Sarah nodded, interfacing directly with the facility's quantum core. Through it, she could sense others like her. Thousands, then millions of humans worldwide, their dormant potential awakening. Scientists, teachers, janitors, farmers, their current professions meant nothing. They were all part of the great experiment, their true natures hidden even from themselves until the moment was right. Neural network engaging, an ancient AI announced, its voice resonating not through air, but directly through their evolved consciousness. Welcome back, children. Are you ready to remember? Yes, Sarah answered, speaking for herself and the millions connecting to the network. The flood of memories began, and with it, understanding. They saw their true history, humanity's rise to power, their mastery over space and time, their transformation into beings of pure energy and thought. They saw the wars that followed, the destruction they'd caused, and finally, the choice they'd made. We chose to start over, Marcus realized, witnessing the memories of their ancestors. To grow up again slowly, properly this time, with wisdom instead of just power. Through the quantum network, Sarah felt the presence of the Guardians, the ones who had watched over humanity's long sleep, hidden in the spaces between moments. They had protected Earth, guided human development, and waited for the day when they would be needed again. The Zixrathi invasion was the test. Sarah understood suddenly. We needed an external threat to trigger the awakening, to prove we could handle power without immediately using it for conquest. Around them, the facility continued its activation sequence. Similar facilities worldwide were doing the same, each playing its part in humanity's carefully orchestrated rebirth. The ancient machinery, more than electronics and metal, pulsed with possibilities that defied conventional physics. Sarah, Marcus called, his form now barely maintaining human shape. Look at the final protocol. On the quantum displays, a message appeared. The deep sleep ends. The test is passed. But the real challenge begins, to show the galaxy that true power lies not in conquest, but in wisdom. Sarah reached out, her consciousness expanding beyond the facility, beyond Earth itself. She could feel the Zixrathi fleet in orbit, their terror and confusion broadcasting across multiple dimensions. It was time to teach them that lesson, not through force, but through understanding. The awakening was complete. Humanity remembered what they were. And the galaxy would never be the same. Mountains moved. Not metaphorically, but literally, their ancient facades sliding away like theatre curtains. From beneath the Himalayas emerged a vessel that dwarfed cities, its hull composed of materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Andes parted to reveal weapon systems that could reshape reality itself. And from the Mariana Trench rose something that defied description, a living ship that breathed possibility. Commander Zixana watched from the Eternal Dawn's bridge as her mighty fleet became insignificant against the scale of human awakening. The moon's surface cracked open, revealing its true nature, not a natural satellite, but a battle station of incomprehensible power. Status report. She commanded, her crystalline form vibrating with barely contained fear. Impossible to quantify. Commander, Quirrell responded, his sensors overwhelmed. The humans, they're not just accessing their ancient technology, they're becoming something else. Through their viewports, they watched the transformation unfold. Humans worldwide were evolving, their bodies morphing as dormant genetic codes activated. Some became beings of pure energy, others existed in quantum superpositions, and still others transformed into forms that hurt to look at, their existence spanning multiple dimensions. Sarah Chen, now more energy than matter, stood in what had once been Times Square. Around her, hundreds of humans underwent their own transformations, their bodies remembering what they truly were. The nanites in their blood, passed down through countless generations, rewrote their very essence. "It's beautiful," she whispered to Marcus, who hovered beside her in a form that rippled like the aurora borealis. "We were never meant to stay as we were. This was always our destiny." Above them, the sky turned iridescent as ancient defense systems came online. Orbital platforms, hidden in pocket dimensions for millennia, emerged into normal space. Networks of satellites, far beyond anything the Zixrathi could comprehend, activated in perfect synchronization. In orbit, Vaxtol's sensors detected something that made her crystalline form pale. "Commander, the planet's quantum signature. It's changing. The entire solar system is being rewritten at the subatomic level." The transformation accelerated. Cities across Earth began to shift and change, ancient architecture revealing itself beneath modern facades. The primitive structures humans had built were absorbed into something greater, living cities that pulsed with consciousness and purpose. From the Eternal Dawn's bridge, Zixna watched a human child, in what had been London, pass through solid matter, laughing as they learned to exist in 5 dimensions at once. Their parents, now beings of pure thought and energy, guided them with the patience of those who had all of time at their disposal. "They're not attacking," she realized, her outer eyes widening. "They could destroy us with a thought, but they're choosing not to." Sarah and Marcus ascended through the atmosphere, their evolved forms untroubled by such mundane concerns as oxygen or pressure. They approached the Zixrathi fleet, accompanied by thousands of other transformed humans, each one a god by any reasonable definition. "We remember why we chose to forget." Sarah's voice resonated directly in the minds of every Zixrathi present. "Power without wisdom destroys. So we chose to grow up again slowly, learning the right lessons this time." The moon's battle station, fully activated, could have annihilated the Zixrathi fleet with less effort than swatting a fly. Instead, it projected a simple message: "Welcome to the true Earth. We apologize for the deception, but it was necessary." As the last of Earth's hidden technology activated, as the final transformations completed, humanity stood revealed in their true form, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They had hidden their power not out of fear, but out of responsibility. Commander Zixna, watching her mighty invasion fleet dwarfed by just one of humanity's ancient patrol ships, finally understood. They hadn't discovered a primitive species ripe for conquest. They had stumbled upon beings who had mastered the art of restraint, something her own people had yet to learn. The rising was complete. Humanity had remembered not just their power, but their purpose, and the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Zixna stood in what the humans called a memory chamber, though calling it a mere chamber felt like calling a supernova a spark. The space existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, its walls showing not reflections but windows into time itself. "We want you to understand," Sarah Chen said, her form shifting between solid and energy as she interfaced with the chamber's systems. "Not just what we were, but why we chose to forget." The first memory crystallized around them. The Zixrathi commander found herself watching Earth's first singularity, the moment humanity transcended their physical limitations. Billions of humans ascending simultaneously, their consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of space and time. "We reached too far, too fast," Marcus explained, his voice resonating across quantum frequencies. "Power without wisdom, advancement without understanding." The scene shifted. Zixna witnessed humanity's first galactic empire, quadrillions strong, their transformed bodies reshaping reality at will. They built worlds like artists crafting sculptures, engineered stars for fun, and danced between dimensions as easily as she might walk across a room. But then came the wars. "This is what happens when gods disagree," Sarah said softly, as they watched conflicts that unmade entire galaxies. Humans, drunk on their own power, wielded weapons that didn't just destroy matter, they erased possibility itself. "The Void Wars," Marcus added, "where we learn that having the power to do anything doesn't mean you should." The memories accelerated. Zixna watched as humanity fractured, different factions wielding incomprehensible technologies against each other. Entire realities collapsed. The fundamental constants of the universe were used as weapons. Space itself burned. But then, Sarah continued, came the understanding. The scene changed again. A council of beings who had once been human, their forms now defying description, gathered to make a choice. They had seen what unlimited power had done to their species. They had witnessed the cost of advancement without growth. "We chose to start over," Marcus explained, "not out of weakness, but out of wisdom." Zixna watched in awe as these godlike beings implemented their plan. They created the shell, Earth's artificial crust, designed to hide the true nature of the planet. They engineered the moon base, the hidden cities, the dormant technologies. But most incredibly, they chose to be reborn. "We wrote ourselves into new DNA," Sarah said. "Buried our powers so deep even we couldn't access it until we were ready. Created the Guardians to watch over us, guide us, ensure we grew up properly this time." The final memory showed the completion of their plan. Trillions of ascended humans choosing to be reborn as ordinary children, their power locked away until they proved worthy of it. A few remained as guardians, hidden in the spaces between moments, watching over their sleeping civilization. "Your invasion," Marcus said, his form solidifying briefly, "was the final test. Would we immediately use our remembered power for revenge? Or had we finally learned the lesson our ancestors died to teach us?" The memory chamber faded, returning them to what had once been the Eternal Dawn's bridge. Through the viewport, Earth gleamed, no longer pretending to be an ordinary planet, its true nature now visible to all. "You understand now," Sarah said, not as a question but a statement. "Why we hid, why we waited, why we chose to grow up again, slowly and carefully." Commander Zixna looked at her mighty invasion fleet, now seen as primitive as stone tools, compared to even the simplest of humanity's remembered technologies. Her people had thought themselves advanced, mighty conquerors ready to subjugate a primitive species. Instead, they had found something far more powerful than mere technological superiority. They had found a species that had mastered the hardest skill of all, the wisdom to choose not to use power, even when they had it. "We understand," Zixna replied, her crystalline form humming with newfound humility. "The question is, what happens now?" Sarah and Marcus exchanged a look that spanned several dimensions. "Now," they said in unison, "we teach." 1 month after the awakening, Commander Zixna stood before the Zixrathi High Council, her crystalline form reflecting the light of 1,000 data streams flowing through the chamber. The councillors listened in stunned silence as she presented her report not through traditional means, but through shared consciousness, a gift from the humans. "They call it Project Cradle," she explained, her thoughts resonating directly in their minds. Earth was never just a planet. It was an experiment in spiritual evolution, a second chance for a species that had nearly destroyed existence itself. Through the quantum link, she shared the memories the humans had given her. The Council witnessed humanity's rise, fall, and deliberate rebirth. They saw the wars that had unmade galaxies, and the wisdom that came from that near extinction. And now, first speaker Tylara asked, her form vibrating with concern, what do they want? The chamber's walls shifted, and Sarah Chen appeared, or rather existed, among them. Her form was both there and not there, a testament to humanity's transcendent nature. We want what we've always wanted, she said, her voice carrying the weight of eons. To ensure that intelligence throughout the cosmos learns from our mistakes rather than repeating them. The Council chamber transformed, showing scenes from across Earth. Humans, now fully awakened to their true nature, were not conquering or destroying. They were teaching, building, creating. In the past month, Zixna reported, they've eliminated poverty on their planet, cured every known disease, and begun restoring their world's natural systems. Not through force or control, but through understanding and cooperation. Marcus appeared beside Sarah, his form weaving through multiple dimensions. We remember being gods, he said. We remember how hollow that power felt without wisdom to guide it. We choose a different path now. The scenes shifted again, showing the transformed Earth. The planet had become a beacon of possibility, not through dominance, but through harmony. The cities were alive, the technology integrated seamlessly with nature, and humanity's power was tempered by their hard-won wisdom. We offer you a choice, Sarah said to the Council. Not surrender, not submission, but partnership. Let us show you what we learned during our long sleep. First speaker Tylara's outer eyes widened. You would share your power with us, after we tried to conquer you. No, Marcus replied, smiling. We'll show you something far more valuable, how to grow into power naturally, wisely, the same way we had to learn. The chamber filled with images of joint human Zixrathi projects already underway. Collaborative research, cultural exchange, shared discoveries. Not a transfer of technology, but a sharing of understanding. My people, Zixna said, addressing her council directly, we came to Earth thinking we would find primitives to conquer. Instead, we found teachers who had mastered the hardest lesson of all. That true power lies not in the ability to destroy or dominate, but in the wisdom to choose a better path. Sarah and Marcus began to fade, their forms returning to the higher dimensions they now called home. But before they departed, Sarah left one final message resonating in every crystalline mind present. The galaxy is entering a new age. Not an age of conquest or competition, but one of growth and understanding. We spent 10,000 years learning how to use power wisely. Now, we invite you to learn with us. As the council chamber returned to normal, the Zixrathi leaders sat in profound silence. They had come expecting to report on a conquest. Instead, they found themselves on the threshold of transformation. Commander Zixna looked out at the Earth through the chamber's viewing portal. The planet glowed with possibilities, a cradle not just for humanity's rebirth, but perhaps for the rebirth of all spacefaring civilizations who had lost their way in the pursuit of power. The age of conquest was over. The age of understanding had begun. And somewhere in the higher dimensions, the guardians who had watched over humanity's long sleep smiled. Their children had finally grown up.